Speaking of strange and abnormal, let's transition to spoiler-free Tenet thoughts, which is going to be a weird topic for us to dance around because we do not, under any circumstances, want to spoil this movie for anybody. And again, it's one of those, it's a difficult movie to spoil.
Yes.
But that being said, we're extremely aware of the fact that people going into this movie want to be as in the dark as possible. Nolan is obviously extremely intricate with the way that he lays out his stories, but the three of us were lucky enough to see it.
And it's also, I think it's also worth admitting and being transparent in that myself, Kevin, and Sean, our screening experiences are not reflective of what the average moviegoer's experience is going to look like. We were all very fortunate to have screenings set up for us, either in our hometowns. Yeah, Sean had a whole circumstance, but we were all very fortunate to have screenings set up for us that had very few to no other people in it. And you know, we're very lucky in that way. So I think it would be dishonest to not be transparent about that and just openly admit that, like, we recognize that our circumstances seeing it are not the circumstances that those of you at home are going to have if you live in an area in which theaters are open.
What I will do is I'll transition that into, I waited 9 hours to see Tenet, and I would have waited 9 additional hours to see it because it is so worth it. It's so worth it. It's Nolan at his most Nolan-y in the best way possible. You can read my review I put up on CinemaBlend right now. It is relatively spoiler-free. I gave it 5 stars. There's one thing I wanted to sort of ding it for, and this isn't spoiling much of anything, but we'll talk about, I'm sure, the audio mix. Christopher Nolan and his audio mixes can be complicated. I had a really hard time with Interstellar. When I saw Interstellar in the theater, all of the stuff that he has going on over the course of the movie often drowns out dialogue. Before we even started recording, we were talking about Bane and the issues that they had with him.
And Sean, just real fast, that's a story that not I mean, people remember it happening, but the prologue came out for Dark Knight Rises. People couldn't understand what Bane was saying through the mask. And then
it was the scene in the airplane. He showed the entire airplane scene.
Yeah, it was the beginning.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes. And people couldn't understand anything that Tom Hardy was saying.
And then he went back and fixed it, didn't he?
He went back and did ADR. I think he ADR'd every Bane line, didn't he?
Well, yeah, he definitely changed it. Like we know that he fixed it to make it sound. It's noticeably different. It actually sounds kind of cartoony.
It sounds a little bit cartoony.
I like it.
So, all that being said, it is it's Nolan doing a spy movie. It's Nolan doing global espionage, essentially.
It's Nolan doing Terminator.
It's a little bit of Nolan doing Terminator. A lot bit of Nolan doing Terminator. But I thought it was incredibly smart. I thought it was incredibly brilliant, and the way that the screenplay structured it out. I thought John David Washington was incredible in the lead. I thought Branagh was incredible. Cast is great. The set pieces are incredible. It's everything that you want a Nolan movie to be. To me, it delivered on almost every level. And it's one of those movies where even if you've watched every trailer and paid attention to every single thing that's going on, you're still really just... Kevin keeps saying it. He says, we're not ready. Your mind is not ready for where this movie takes you.
I've been joking about that, but I've been serious. I remember I spoke to Kenneth Branagh for Artemis Fowl, and the way he described the way Nolan works is that as if Nolan sees the world in time. And, you know, it sounds kind of an exaggeratory thing to say, but I say we're not ready because I do think we are living in a time period where we are witnessing our Hitchcock, our Kubrick. And we're lucky. We're very lucky to be living through a filmmaker like this. A person who is genuinely going back to the past to change the future of filmmaking, ironically. And so you think about the structure of this film. It's a movie that makes you work. You have to work, and that's the beauty of Nolan. You can't sit there and shove popcorn in your mouth and just kind of lay back. You're in it. He's immersing you. He's grabbing you by the throat and pulling you into these images. Everything on screen is tangible. You can touch everything. You could put your hand on that screen and grab everything. And I think yesterday was a really special day for me and for us. And I want to talk about it from that perspective real quickly, because yesterday was the first day I returned to a film theater to see a movie in a theater. I wore a mask the whole time, which was a little strange. It was hard to breathe sometimes, and it gave me a little more respect for people who have to wear masks all day for their job. My brother-in-law sells cars, and he hasn't had a break this entire pandemic, and he's working in 94-degree heat with a mask on. It just gave me perspective, right? But yesterday, I've just been going through a tough mental time just in general. But yesterday, I just kind of felt right again. And I'll tell you why. Like, there's the beauty of what we all do and why we all love what we do. And the reason this whole show started was that you leave a film like that and then you just talk for 2 hours about every single intricate detail of the movie. And last night, we all hopped on a phone call for 2 hours and unraveled the whole film, literally from start to finish. We all walked through it, bit by bit.
So I left Greenville, South Carolina, and talked to these guys until I pulled into my driveway. And we did the entire drive.
And to tell you the truth, it was the happiest I've been in a long time because it reminded me why I love going to the cinema, but also it reminded me of when a movie hits that hard, that the conversations you can have with your friends is such a special thing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I understood every aspect of this film. I don't think it's meant to be understood in the first viewing. It's in a good way. It's frustrating, if that makes sense, because there's so much going on, but that script is airtight. And as we approach certain things towards, with the film, everything you had seen prior, it's all there. Everything is there, and your brain is just trying to piece it together like a puzzle as you're watching it. If you can envision like a brain being like shaken and trying to find its way back to normalcy, that's kind of how the film felt. I felt like my mind was just being blown for 2.5 hours.
Well, and I'll say that there's moments when the movie clicks. When I would be like, damn, Nolan, how did you even write this? Dude, that it came together the way that it does.
If we have to understand, writing this script is already insane. But to pull it off visually with music and performances and edits and action is a whole nother level of insanity. This is hands down, the largest scale film I have ever witnessed in my entire life. I'll tell you why. Everything is done in camera. There's not a single green screen being used. It is all real. Everything you're watching is real. The scale of this is absurd, to a point where, I've seen big films. Avengers Endgame, whatever you want to get into. And I think this, from a scale perspective, is the largest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen anything this large. Because, again, it's a $205 million practical effects film. It's not a $205 million CGI fest. The IMAX shots are glorious. Absolutely glorious. And a lot of it is IMAX. And I saw it in 190. I didn't see the 143 yet, which is the preferred format he shoots in. Either way, I still had the transitions from 65 to IMAX. But regardless, Ludwig, his score, Nolan works a lot with Hans Zimmer, and I've loved that relationship over the years. Loved it. The D note he did for Joker, that little dissonant note, everything he did with Nolan and Dunkirk and everything. This was a fresh score. It felt fresh. It didn't feel like a Zimmer score. It felt like a different type of music. It moved. I also loved that all the songs in the trailers are actually in the movie. So sometimes you go watch a trailer like Inception, and there's a song on the Inception trailer called Mind Heists by a guy named Zach. I can't remember his name. That song didn't end up in Inception. And if you watch a trailer so many times that you get used to the way the music hits in the trailer, and you want it. And
if that Pink Floyd song is not a New Mutants, I'm gonna be really disappointed.
But my point is that all the emotions you've been feeling while watching these trailers since December of last year, with the music that you've had it with, is going to be there for you. And I think that's the coolest thing I've seen in a long time was that I was like, oh, thank God he's using these beats and this music. And I know, Jake, I don't mean to keep going on this long. This is just a lot to say about it. But and we'll get into spoilers later. But it's an astounding cinematic achievement on a level that I don't fully comprehend. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I understood this film because I didn't. We had a 2-hour long unraveling discussion last night that opened my eyes to things that I could not wait to go back to.
I had to explain it to these guys, essentially. I had to basically lay the story out for them in a way.
I would argue I had a fairly decent understanding of this movie.
But
thanks, Mr. I don't understand Inception.
I don't really.
Last thing I will say, if you thought Inception was confusing, this is, I think, Jake and I said this. I think it's the most...
Wait, leave things for me to say.
No, I said this too, but I didn't take this from you. I said this. We both agreed on this. It's the most complicated film I've ever seen, and I'll let Jake go on that. But I think it's a good thing. It's a film that I'm seeing again on Monday, again on Wednesday, and again September 8th, and I have tickets for all of it. And I'm gonna keep going and going and going, and I am going to unlock everything. I can't wait to get back in that theater and revisit what I experienced. And this is what I'll end on. Largest action set pieces I've ever seen. There's a coldness to the film that I think works in its benefit.
It's called Nolan.
It's Nolan. I've said this before on the show. Interstellar was the first movie that broke through emotionally for me as an audience member for Nolan. It was the first time I ever cried in a Chris Nolan film. I did too. This is very cold, but in the best way possible.
I'll push back on that. I don't think that's accurate, but I know what you're saying. I will just say this, and I'll end, and then we'll go to Jake. It's a phenomenal achievement that, as I sit here right now, I don't feel comfortable reviewing it. I'm not giving it stars yet because I don't know how I feel 100%. I'm basically walking through my mindset after seeing it less than 24 hours ago. And I don't think we need to live in a society where we walk out of a film and immediately tweet a reaction. I felt so great yesterday leaving that theater, getting into a car, and processing it on my 40-minute drive home. It was wonderful. I didn't have anything to tweet out. I was just, let me take this in. So I loved it, but I'm going again before I officially give my stars. Jake, you hated it?
Yeah.
Ditto, I guess. All
right, great. Let's move on to New Mutants.
No, I will say that I'm with these guys and that I absolutely loved it. It's actually my favorite movie so far this year. But I am prepared for pushback.
Yeah.
Because I think, and Sean disagrees, and we can get into this, I think that this is Nolan's least accessible film by far.
I agree.
I think, and I hate using this expression, but you know what I mean when I say this. I think general audiences are going to hate this movie. I think Inception, a lot of people keep asking me to compare it in terms of difficulty to understand. And here's, I do want to do a quick sidebar. I agree with Kevin, and that it is one of the most difficult movies I've had to kind of piece together.
But it's
I
fun
don't
to
know.
piece it.
Sure,
Yeah.
but my point is, I don't know how much of that is because of how complicated it truly is. Because at no point did I question what the characters were doing or their motivations as much as I did sort of the minute details. So I don't know how much of it comes from the complications of Nolan's script and how much of it comes from the fact that the sound mixing was so bad that I only understood about half of what the characters were saying. So I don't know, whenever I talk about how complicated it is, I don't know if I mean that as like, prepare yourself because it's really layered, or just like, I couldn't understand what the fuck anybody was saying.
This is why earlier in the episode we were doing that, because Jake was making us laugh before we started the show. It's like, what's that?
What's that?
The sound mixing is something that we have had a lot of discussions about offline, and it's something that's been discussed in a lot of Nolan's films.
Yeah,
but this was really funny because Jake and I got on the phone last night right after we both saw it, and I called it one of Nolan's most accessible films.
And I think it is by far and away his least accessible film by far.
So funny.
I think people ask me, well, Inception was fairly complicated, and Inception looks like a coloring book compared to I walked out of Inception understanding it was it complicated, and did it ask you to really follow it? Yes. But I walked out of the theater the first time I saw it understanding it unquestionably 100%. I had no issue understanding Inception. Tenet, I think, and also there are a lot of really big ideas that it's difficult to wrap your head around. I'm not going to get into the details of them, but a lot of time-based ideas that go against what we perceive as time. And it's hard to both follow a complicated plot and try to wrap your brain around these very big ideas. It is a movie that whether you believe a movie should be allowed to do this or not, demands multiple viewings. But I do think that it challenges us. I do think it is an original, astonishing achievement. Like I said, I don't know if it's complicated comes from the layered script or just from the lack of understanding of the dialogue. And I as much as we love it, I am prepared to go on the air, tell my morning show audience how much I love this movie, and I'm prepared to receive backlash from people going, "What the hell? Why did you send me to that? That was BS. Why? Like I did not. I'm prepared for that."
But
when I think that yesterday. Go ahead.
There's a difference between and I'm trying to think of a good example of throw under the bus, like a Suspiria or an Upstream Color or something like. When you refer general audiences to something like that, where they're just like, "What am I watching here?"
I said to my general audiences to see Inception, and I think the general audiences would say like, "Yeah, it was complicated, but I loved it. It was great." I don't think we're going to get that same reaction from Tenet. I'm
willing to bet we will. I think that there's enough
I'm willing to bet we won't.
Yeah, to me, it's a smart James Bond movie. To me, it's a really intelligent Bond thriller.
Here's the thing. I will never fault a film for me not understanding it the first time I see it. I mean that, but to Jake's point, it is a very, very hard film to follow. Now, I don't necessarily find that to be a bad thing because I love piecing together his films. So for me, that works. But when I got home yesterday and Lauren was asking me how it was, I didn't really know what to say because I do think that people are going to have a hard time following the film. Now, does that, no pun intended, but I do think that this is a film that's going to require, we've all seen the stories. Didn't the actors didn't understand the script the first time they read it?
Pattinson came out and said that he still doesn't understand it.
John David Washington says you have to watch it I'm paraphrasing, 4 or 5 times to get it. And I get that could be a turnoff to some people. I totally understand
there are a lot of people that say I shouldn't have to see a movie 4 or 5 times.
Right, sure, yeah. I do believe that. I think a movie needs to work the first time.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that if a filmmaker has a tight enough script and he's taken you on a journey and there are things you're missing throughout that maybe he wants you to miss so that you go back and see them on the second viewing. I know sometimes people say, "Oh, it's a cop out to say, oh, you got to see it 3 times to fully get it." And Jake, like Jake said, Jake put it brilliantly. I'm prepared for that backlash. I already know, based on what I experienced yesterday, that this is going to be a very hard film for audiences to follow. And I have watched every Nolan movie multiple times, and I had a really hard time following it, but I loved it. So that's where I'm at right now.
So we had a conversation before we started the show, and I'm just going to give you guys a little peek behind the curtain because of what we plan to do coming up. So we know that it's going to be a little while before most people get a chance to go see this film. And maybe it's not something that you could rush right out to go see. It might not even be available where you are. We do have international audiences who listen to us, and they've been asking us to sort of break it down. We're going to do an in-depth, spoilery conversation chat about Tenet, where and hopefully we all get a chance to even go back and revisit it. Kevin, as you mentioned, said he's going to see it 3 more times.
And I'm going Monday, and when we do the show next week, I'll tell you if it was, because last night our 2-hour conversation unlocked so much for me. You know what I mean?
Is there a way I can go to a screening with closed captioning?
That would be helpful. It's not a joke. That would actually.
No, I'm not joking. Don't they actually offer
for hearing impaired?
I would love to do that.
So we'll have that, and we're not sure if we're going to have it next week or the week after. We're going to wait a little bit for people to be able to have a chance to go see this, because we would love to talk in depth about it And some people have asked us specifically to really drill down into it because we are such Nolan fans. But we're going to wait and give people the opportunity to hopefully go see it on the big screen in the safest way possible so that everyone feels comfortable. And then we're able to discuss the film in more detail.
Little cool thing. I was reading the press notes the other day, and this is such a nerdy thing, but the truck flip in Dark Knight, the gentleman who was in that truck flipping it, his name is Jim Wilkie, stuntman. He was the actual person that was Ledger, right? Because Ledger's in the truck when it flips, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So he's the guy. He's the stuntman. Yeah, that's an amazing scene. I love when Ledger just walks down the street, just firing the gun violently to the
as
side.
he's stumbling around.
It's amazing. So. The reason I want to bring that up is because the same guy who flipped the truck in Dark Knight is the guy that helped crash the plane in Tenet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So apparently he had to go to some driving school. He's the guy that's towing the airplane
that's
towards
cool.
the hangar. And then people out there, this is not a spoiler, it's in the trailers. But the story surrounding that is another reason why I want to highlight Nolan. They ran the numbers on that whole thing, and it was cheaper for him to do that in camera with a real 747 and blow it up versus doing it with CGI and or miniatures. And I think the last thing I'll say about this film is I think this might be one of the most pivotal films that we've ever seen made in our lifetimes, and I'll tell you why. You're talking about a movie that shows you that you can do every insane thing in action in camera on the screen, right? And apparently some of it is cheaper than using CGI effects. Mm-hmm. Any filmmaker who watches Tenet and goes to make an action film and wants to rely on CGI when they could potentially do it in camera is going to have to check themselves now. Because
but you have to remember that most filmmakers are not getting the blank check that Nolan is getting.
See, that's where I disagree. If you go back and watch Memento, any film he made
Memento and Tenet, he's not doing the same thing.
Oh, hold on a second. There have been plenty of $200 million films that have been made for the same price Tenet was made with a ton of CGI. It's not. It's a cop-out thing, in my opinion, to say, "Oh, Nolan has a $200 million budget." There are $200 million films that are full CGI fests. We've seen them.
Because there are things that just don't exist.
Gabriel,
I want to push back on that slightly, though, Kev, because you're saying the other filmmakers will have to deal with that. He did that. Nolan had to get it, though. He had to get it in camera.
He had
the benefit
to?
of CGI is not just about the.
Or he wanted to.
Well, if he. No. He had to, in order to get the shot, he had to get it. I mean, he had to pull it off. Right. CGI allows you to do different versions, to try different angles, to try different things. Filmmakers can just get more freedom with CGI. It's not just about it's cheaper or, we can just do it in post. It is that, sure. But I push back on that because you can just try different things with visual effects versus Nolan had to figure it out, which is to his testament, to his credit. He had to figure it out. They had to storyboard it. They had to plan everything to a T. Then they had to hit record and do it. And he probably didn't have, too many chances. That's great, but I don't think we should besmirch people moving forward.
Does Nolan storyboard?
It's just
does
not
anyone know if
although it's practical, it's not.
Does Nolan storyboard? I've never seen a Nolan storyboard. Honestly,
he does.
Everyone's storyboards leak. Have you guys ever seen Nolan's storyboard?
I just saw that chalkboard where he just draws.
I've seen Dunkirk storyboards.
Have you really? Okay, I was curious.
I want to clarify one thing I said. The movie has 280 VFX shots. It's not like there's not CGI in the film. There's CGI in the movie. The point I'm making is, Avengers Endgame. You can't do that scene without CGI at the end. It's just not possible to have people flying around like that. I get that. So I want to clarify that I'm not saying that every filmmaker has to make practical action going forward. I'm saying that there are too many filmmakers out there right now that say, you know what? We'll just fix that in post. I think CGI should be a little button in the paint toolbox that you go to, like Gabe just said, to enhance or make something better.
Basically what Spielberg did with Jurassic Park.
Thank you. All right, I had this exact conversation yesterday with somebody after I walked out of Tenet. Because that's where CGI and practical effects merge.
He only used the CGI if he had to.
So my point being is that is the way, in my opinion, filmmaking should be done. If you can do it in camera, you should try and scale it out and do it. I have no problem with VFX artists. I think VFX artists are geniuses. I just don't think CGI should be relied upon if you can try to get it in camera. That's all I'm saying.
two of my favorite movies of all time have an entire CGI character.
That's fine. I don't mind. I'm not saying I hate CGI. I'm just
And
saying.
Brolin's brilliant. Brolin adds a lot to it.
Yeah.
You know, they rely on Brolin for that. Yeah. I totally understand.
You see where I'm coming from.
I can't say this, but I can say that there are huge set pieces in Tenet that if they used green screen would hit differently. That's all I'll say. They would hit differently. We're going to move on. Yeah, because I don't want to give too much away. We're going to talk spoilers for that later on.